All right, this week for vocabulary, we're on Unit 2, Week 2. Our story is called Coyote School News. Our first vocabulary word is Roundup. So can we see we have a picture there. It looks like some men on horses with some cattle. And a sentence using the word Roundup would be, the cowboys and the cattle are on a roundup. So I want you to think about what roundup could mean based on those picture clues and based on those clues from the sentence. So what do you think roundup means? So roundup means driving or bringing cattle together from long distances. So as you can see in the picture, there's cowboys on horses, and they're rounding up the cattle and taking that cattle from one place to another. So this is a term that you would hear in kind of Western culture, in kind of the Old West, and involving cowboys and cattle and things like that. Our next word is coyote. So you can see that there's an animal right there called a coyote. And a sentence using coyote would be, I saw a coyote in the field. Okay, so I want you to think about what a coyote is, and you've probably heard of a coyote before, maybe even seen some. They are in places like Minnesota, so you may have heard them or seen them before. So coyote means, or it is, a small, wild, wolf-like mammal that howls. So if you live in the country or you've spent some time out in the country in Minnesota, a lot of times at night you might hear coyotes howling. I know in my parents' house where I grew up, there was some nights where we would hear coyotes howling. The next word is Spurs. So it says the cowboy bought a pair of fancy Spurs. So if you look at our picture, we have what looks like a cowboy's foot. He's wearing cowboy boots. It looks like he's wearing some leather chaps on his legs. And then he has a shiny metal piece kind of on the heel of his boot. So I want you to think about, based on this picture in our sentence, what are spurs? Spurs are metal points or pointed wheels on a rider's boot heel. So if we go back and look at this picture, as you can see, right in here, right there, is where you can see the spurs. So there's a little pointed wheel at the end of it. And so spurs are used when you're riding horses to kind of get the horse to go faster. So you kind of put your spur into the horse, and that would tell the horse that you wanted to go faster. So they're metal points or pointed wheels on a rider's boot heel. Again, another thing that you would see cowboys wearing. Okay, so now that we've gotten through 3 of our vocabulary words for this week, do you notice a theme with our words? So do you notice some things that are in common between these 3 different pictures? Our next word is dudes. So a sentence using dudes is he showed the dudes how to saddle a horse. So you're probably thinking of the word dudes in the way that you've heard it used in your life. So if someone's talking to a friend, they'll be like, hey dude, what are you doing this weekend? Well, if we look at this picture, we can see that dudes might not mean the same thing as what you might be familiar with. So if we look at this picture, we have some guys on some horses. They're wearing cowboy hats. It looks like they're out in the country. And it said he showed the dudes how to saddle a horse. Okay, so based on those clues, I want you to kind of think about what dudes might mean, and it might not be the same as what you're familiar with. So a dude is a word used to describe people raised in the city. So dudes would be people that are raised in the city. So if you were a cowboy from the West who was used to living out in the country, dealing with cattle and horses, and you're a cowboy, you might call someone from the city a dude. So if a guy from New York City came to your ranch, you would call them a dude because they are people that were raised in the city. Okay, so if we look back at this sentence, he showed the dudes how to saddle a horse. Well, the cowboy would have to show the dudes how to saddle a horse because they would be from the city and they would not know how to saddle a horse. Okay, next one is bawling. So you can see we have a little child who does not look very happy. They are bawling. It says the baby was bawling because he was hungry. Okay, so based on this picture, this might be a familiar word you've heard before. Think about what bawling means, and you might be able to think of some synonyms that go along with it. I know I can right away when I see this picture. Think about what bawling might mean. Okay, bawling means shouting or crying out in a noisy way. Okay, so think about what you look like maybe, or if you have brothers or sisters, what do they look like when they're bawling? Okay, they're shouting out or crying out in a noisy way. Or maybe you've been at the store and you've seen a little kid who can't get the toy that they want and they might start bawling. Okay, so think about what that means. All right, kiddos. So that wraps up our vocabulary words for this week. Remember that if you need to go back, you can rewind this video if you missed any of those definitions, or if you'd like to look back at those pictures, you can do that. Have a great week.